Hello everybody, my name is Benjamin Bloom, coming at you from a lovely soulless retail park in Norwich. Don't ask, but the reason we are here is it's firing time again. We always do a video on the channel whenever a championship manager goes, and I have just read on Twitter a notification telling me that Middlesbrough have chosen to not extend the contract of Tony Pulis as manager. I don't know whether that classes as a firing or mutual respect or mutual consent, whatever you want to call it. Either way, Tony Pulis was Middlesbrough manager yesterday, and he's not Middlesbrough manager today. So Pulis came in to replace Gary Monk, who wasn't there at all long. Remember, Boro came down 2 seasons ago. They'd only been up for 1 season, and that's important because it's only 2 years parachute money has come down to help Steve Gibson out, about 75 million coming in. So big advantage for Boro. They bring in Monk. He lasts until about Christmas, if I remember right. Not going terribly well, and he's replaced by Tony Pulis, obviously very experienced guy, but a bit more known for a pragmatic, let's just say, style of football. Pulis does well in his first season to get Boro into the playoffs. It's a team with Adama Traore absolutely on fire. I remember at that season just scaring the hell out of teams, being double marked. They go into the playoffs, and I was at these games. It was Steve Bruce versus Tony Pulis, and God, compared to what we've seen this week, both teams irresistible force, immovable object, well, rock and a hard place, more like. Neither team goes for it, and I guess there's some sense that Pulis, did he bottle the playoffs? Because this is the tactics he tends to play a lot of the time. But Boro, really, it was almost like he set out to draw 0-0 in that second playoff game, despite the fact that they were 1-0 down. So we get into the summer. Obviously, Boro don't make it to Wembley. Fulham go up through the playoffs. It's the second season, so those parachute payments drop from 45 to 35 million. And you've basically got 1 year to go before you have to completely rewrite your your kind of rule book on how you're going to get out of the division, especially now with the precedent set. Birmingham were punished for going over that 13 million losses per season. So it's not just the case now that Steve Gibson can just throw a lot of money at this. And does he want to? So we go into this season and Boro start the season fairly well. They're up there, and everyone's kind of thinking, well, if Boro can extrapolate this over the whole season, they were just not conceding any goals whatsoever. They were very, very hard to beat. They were hitting the 2 points per game. It was looking like Pulis was just going to, kind of slug his way through the championship. And frankly, it did look like for the opening weeks of the season that Boro were going to be up there. Obviously, it hadn't transpired that this season was going to be an open season, and none of the money teams, we'll speak about Villa if they go up, we don't know, but none of the money teams really making a big challenge, opening the door up. Obviously Norwich and Sheffield United sprinted through that door and took advantage of all of the parachute teams not mounting a challenge, obviously again pending what Villa do. So Boro are staying in there, but it seemed that the football was, and the attacking was getting more and more and more blunted. 5 at the back, 5-4-1s, systems that are supposed to be with wing backs but basically with full backs. Not a lot of goals, not a lot of excitement. And I remember over Christmas a bad run and home defeats happening, and Boro fans were kind of unhappy with all of this. That might have been a time where Steve Gibson said, okay, let's try something else, in the same way kind of West Brom did when it looked like Darren Moore wasn't going to make automatic. They did go nice and quickly, but Pulis stays in there, and it looked for all the world, I guess with about 10 games to go, that they were going to nail that 5th position. I remember them going away to West Brom and getting a kind of unlikely 3-2 win in a high-scoring game there, and I really did think that we were nailed on for West Brom versus Boro in the playoffs and a 5th place finish. And for whatever reason, the wheels just totally fell off. I think it was a 6-game or a 5-game losing streak. You can fact check me on that. But just a horrible run by Boro to drop from 5th place right out of the playoff positions. At the same time, Bristol City put in a challenge and Derby put in a challenge. And we get to the end of the season and Derby end up pipping Boro. Derby did have a good run at the end of the season. I think they hit 2 points per game for maybe the last 7 or 8 games. So, and look, they're in the playoff final coming up. So Derby did have a good run, and Boro, just that losing streak completely killed them. So we now know that Steve Gibson is in a position now where his manager's contract is expiring. He's got no more parachute payments, and they're really going to have to look at it up at Boro. And the first thing he's chosen to do is to get rid of Tony Pulis. There's not going to be a lot of money to spend there. Now they're obviously coming down from that 45 million, 35 million. Well, it's now 7 million in terms of broadcast money. Parachutes get chucked into broadcast money. So Boro, for all their nice stadium and their decent squad, Boro are now in with everybody else, and they're going to have to bring in a manager who's going to have to duck and dive a bit more. And you know what's going to happen. Huddersfield are now coming down with 45 million. Cardiff are coming down with 45 million, and Fulham will come down with 45 million. So every year you get a new set of teams who have that financial advantage. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Boro do. I would suspect, if we get comments on this video, that most people would agree that now is probably the time for Pulis to move aside. That would be my opinion. If he wasn't going to do it with parachute money in that squad, how's he going to do it with probably less money and less good players and less wages? It needs a bit of a new look, would be my view up at Boro. Haven't looked. They normally throw out the odds for new managers. Obviously, every time we do one of these videos, there's the spectre of Slavica Jokanovic, who is probably the last guy to get promoted out of the Championship who's sort of available and ready to go. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Obviously, I saw this at Ipswich. It's not easy to move from a very pragmatic defensive style of football and change very quickly with the same players. Obviously, higher level of quality at Boro than we're talking about at places like Ipswich. But it's going to be a very interesting transition for who goes. And I suppose Gibson's done the right thing doing this right at the start of pre-season to give whoever he gets a decent pre-season, a decent run of it, although they're probably going to have to sell players, frankly, if they do want to do any moving in the transfer market, given now their parachute money is gone. So I'm very interested to see what people think down in the comments, who they think is going to come in and how it's going to play out for Boro. This isn't a situation like Norwich had, where the parachute money disappeared, but they already had a plan in place. They're a good sort of 15 months behind Norwich on that regard, so we can't really use that as an example. So in short, I'm a little bit worried if Boro hire the wrong guy and this transition's not done well, we could see them in lower mid-table next season if this isn't handled well. What needs to happen at Boro is they need to have someone in very soon. They need to set up a financial plan and give the manager a 3-year contract and work towards it and stick towards it. And maybe it might be a tough year or two, but that'll be the way they need to go, in my opinion. Get your thoughts in. Tony Pulis gone. Your thoughts on his reign, the decision, and what you think Boro should do in the future. Thank you very much for watching. As usual, hit me on Twitter at Benjamin Bloom. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. Championship content coming at you like anything. I've got loads of footage in my phone from the playoffs this past week to get up. I'm about to do an interview here in Norwich. I've just been on the Sheffield United podcast as well. Loads of me everywhere. I assume you want to hear from me if you've got 9.5 minutes into one of my videos. So loads of good stuff up there. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.